Lockout was skipped. On July 17, 2013, Michael Thompson arrived at the packaging plant in Ohio, where he had worked for 11 years. He was 42 years old and responsible for maintaining several automated lines that filled, sealed, and transported boxed products across the facility floor. The machines were loud and fast, but they were also familiar. Michael had repaired them dozens of times without incident. That morning, the conveyor had already stopped twice before 8 o'clock. Each interruption added pressure. Supervisors moved between stations checking output numbers. Workers adjusted their pace. The floor was busy, and the expectation was clear. Keep things moving. When the line jammed again near the middle section, Michael walked to the control panel and shut the system down. The enclosure door swung open. The rollers were still. The surrounding lines continued running, but this section had gone quiet. At this point, nothing seemed unusual. The lockout-tagout procedure required the machine to be fully isolated and physically locked before anyone entered. The locks were hanging on a rack less than 3 meters away. Applying them would take several minutes that felt significant on a floor already running behind. Michael stepped inside without securing them. He leaned forward and reached into the roller assembly to pull out a crushed piece of packaging material wedged between the parts. Several meters away, another employee glanced at the idle line and assumed the work was finished. He walked to the control station and restarted the conveyor. The rollers engaged immediately. Michael had no time to react. Emergency stops were activated within seconds. It was already too late. Michael Thompson died at the scene. The silo that looked solid. On October 4, 2018, Daniel Perez climbed the exterior ladder of a grain silo at an agricultural storage facility in Kansas. He was 34 years old and had worked at the site for several years. Checking grain flow and clearing blockages was routine work he had done many times before without issue. The morning was dry and quiet. A light wind moved across the yard. Other workers moved between buildings in the background. Daniel reached the top and looked down at the grain surface below. It appeared flat, solid, and completely undisturbed. Before entering, procedure required a harness, a lifeline, and a spotter positioned outside. The equipment was stored nearby and had been used on previous jobs at the same site. Daniel did not retrieve it. He stepped down onto the grain surface to break apart what he believed was a minor clog. For a brief moment, the surface held his weight. Then it gave way without warning. Grain was being unloaded from the bottom, creating a hollow pocket beneath the surface that could not be seen from above. When the crust collapsed, Daniel dropped straight down. Grain rushed in around him from every direction, burying him to his chest within seconds. He called out for help. Co-workers ran toward the silo but could not enter safely. Emergency services arrived quickly, but extracting a person from compacted grain takes time Daniel did not have. Daniel Perez suffocated inside the silo. Oxygen was never tested. On March 22, 2016, Sergei Ivanov prepared for a welding assignment at an industrial facility outside Yekaterinburg, Russia. He was 50 years old and had spent decades working with torches and confined spaces. The task involved welding inside a large storage tank that had recently been refilled with oxygen to prevent internal corrosion during a scheduled maintenance period. Workers moved through the yard carrying tools and equipment. The tank sat in its usual position, sealed and unremarkable from the outside. Nothing about the morning felt different from any other shift. Before any hot work in a confined space, procedures required an atmospheric test and ventilation to confirm safe conditions. The testing equipment was available on site. The test was not performed. Sergei climbed inside carrying his welding gear. A co-worker stood near the access opening outside. Nothing appeared wrong. Then he ignited the torch. In an oxygen-enriched atmosphere, materials that normally resist burning ignite violently and without warning. His protective clothing caught fire almost immediately. Witnesses outside heard a sudden surge of sound and saw flames erupt from the access opening. There was no explosion, only fire fed by pure oxygen inside a sealed metal space. Sergei did not escape. The injuries were fatal within moments. Investigators later confirmed that a standard atmospheric test would have identified the hazard before he ever climbed inside. Riding the conveyor. On May 9, 2011, Thomas Berger reported for his afternoon shift at a large distribution center near Frankfurt, Germany. He had worked in the facility for several years and knew the conveyor systems well. The belts ran continuously, carrying thousands of packages per hour from sorting stations to loading bays. Small blockages were a common part of the daily routine. That afternoon, a jam had developed near the end of one conveyor line. Thomas was asked to check it. The belt was still running, moving steadily beneath the backed-up parcels. Company rules stated clearly that no employee was permitted to step onto a moving conveyor under any circumstances. The rule had been covered in safety briefings and was posted near the equipment. The inspection point was reachable by walking around the system. It would have taken less than 2 minutes. Thomas chose the faster option. He stepped onto the belt and let it carry him forward while he focused on the blockage ahead. For For several seconds, nothing seemed wrong. Then his footing shifted. His leg was pulled toward the return roller at the far end of the belt, where the moving surface folded back underneath itself. The machine continued operating as designed. Coworkers reached the emergency stop, but the damage was already done. Thomas Berger died at the scene. The conveyor had not malfunctioned. The mask left behind. On August 14, 2019, Rakesh Kumar arrived at an industrial site in Maharashtra, India, where he worked as a contract laborer. That morning, he was instructed to clean the inside of a large chemical storage tank that had recently been emptied. The job was considered straightforward and expected to take less than an hour. The tank sat in an open yard. The access hatch was open, and a short ladder led down into the interior. From the outside, nothing appeared hazardous. Confined spaces retain invisible dangers long after they appear empty. Oxygen levels can drop without warning as residual gases displace breathable air. Heavier gases settle at the bottom and remain undetected without proper testing. Gas monitors and respiratory masks had been issued for similar tasks at the same site. They were available that morning sitting near the entrance to the yard. Rakesh climbed down carrying cleaning tools and a flashlight, planning to finish quickly. Within moments, the oxygen-deficient atmosphere began to affect him. He became disoriented and collapsed before he could reach the ladder. Two co-workers standing near the hatch noticed he had gone silent. They climbed down to help him, also without protective equipment. Both were overcome within seconds of entering. Emergency responders recovered all three bodies from inside the tank. The protective gear had been present, functional, and left on the surface. Under the press. On January 11, 2014, James Holloway reported for his morning shift at a metal stamping plant in Michigan. He was an experienced maintenance technician and had serviced the hydraulic presses many times before. That morning, one press had been producing misaligned components and was shut down for inspection. The surrounding machines continued running, filling the floor with their usual rhythm. James gathered his tools and walked to the press. The ram was in its upper position. The machine was powered down and appeared completely inert. Hydraulic systems can retain pressure even after power is switched off, pressure that builds silently inside sealed lines and gives no visible indication of its presence. Standard procedure required mechanical support blocks to be placed beneath the ram before any work began. The blocks were stored on a shelf nearby. James believed the pressure had already been released. He did not install them. He positioned himself beneath the ram and began the inspection. For several minutes, nothing moved. The machine was quiet. Then the pressure remaining in the hydraulic lines began to rebuild. The ram descended without warning. Coworkers heard the impact and activated emergency controls immediately. The movement could not be reversed. James Holloway died at the scene. The grinder without a guard. On April 3, 2015, Luis Hernandez began his shift at a manufacturing facility in Texas, where he operated industrial grinding equipment. He was experienced with the machine and used it regularly to shape and finish metal components. His station was near the center of the production floor, surrounded by the steady noise of other equipment running alongside him. The grinder had been fitted with a protective guard designed to contain debris and shield the operator if the wheel fractured under stress. In the weeks before the accident, the guard had been removed to make certain tasks faster. The missing guard was visible to anyone who walked past the station. It had not been replaced. That morning, Luis mounted a metal part and activated the grinder. He applied steady pressure as the wheel spun at full speed. The floor vibrated slightly beneath his feet, the way it always did. Nothing seemed different from any other morning. Then the wheel fractured. Pieces were expelled outward at high velocity. With no guard in place, there was nothing between the fragments and Luis. He collapsed immediately. Coworkers shut down the machine and called for emergency assistance. Luis Hernandez died before help arrived. The grinder had not malfunctioned. The ladder that was faster. On June 21, 2012, Pavel Novak arrived at a power plant in the Czech Republic where he worked as a maintenance technician. His duties regularly required moving between different levels of the facility to inspect equipment and check readings. That day, he needed to reach an elevated platform for a routine inspection that was not considered urgent or complex. The approved access route was a fixed staircase on the opposite side of the building, fitted with railings and non-slip steps. Using it would have required walking the full length of the facility. Closer to his position was a fixed ladder mounted to the wall, intended only for specific maintenance tasks and not rated for regular use. It offered no secondary handhold or safety rail. Pavel chose the shorter route. He gripped the ladder and began to climb. Several meters above the floor, the ladder shifted slightly under his weight. His grip gave way. He fell onto the concrete floor below. Coworkers heard the impact and reached him within seconds, calling emergency services immediately. Pavel was transported to a hospital but died later that day from his injuries. The staircase had been fully accessible the entire time. If you liked this video, hit subscribe for more like it, and let me know in the comments what you want to see next.